what people don't realize is, for me, living with an eating disorder for over a decade is probably the closest I've come to insanity. There's not rationale or logic connected to it. You absolutely feel bonkers. And you are run by a master program that is there to sabotage and destroy you. And it can be very, very overwhelming because, you have to eat 3 times a day. Well, don't have to, but, that's kind of what's encouraged. So it's inescapable. And if you have a tricky relationship with food, you are confronted with it every single day. There's no escape from it.
Being alive is hectic, and that's why we need Time for Us, a place for honest conversation and real connection. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get stuck in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Time for Us. Today we have Samantha Patrick joining us, and our conversation is going to center around healing the female body, our internal narratives. We'll be discussing things like body dysmorphia, eating disorders or disordered eating. And I think just trying to unpack and tackle the overarching internal narrative that seems is quite common among women, how we talk to ourselves, our almost repulsion with aging, the constant wanting to have Botox, all of these things, our dissatisfaction, perpetual dissatisfaction within ourselves with how we look physically is what we are going to be touching on. It's quite a big, juicy subject.
Very much
but I think that we are in very safe hands, very safe and knowledgeable hands.
Hopefully.
So, Sam, do you want to give us a little intro, give the guests an introduction?
Sure. So I'm Samantha Patrick. I'm a holistic life coach and a yoga and a meditation teacher. My predominant focus is working with women, but I work with men as well. And I would say that I work with bringing alignment where there is misalignment in people's lives. So that kind of covers all bases. I focus on nervous system regulation, mind-body connection, and allowing people to feel safe in their bodies so that healing and transformation can actually happen in a sustainable and accessible way. I'm very passionate about helping people heal and allowing people to tap into their own power. So it's very much my job not to become your power source, but to guide you back to your own power. And I'm hoping that this conversation is one where we can explore that a little bit and give people some empowered information about how to connect with their bodies and how to possibly heal if they're struggling.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Yeah, we sent a few voice notes back and forth to try and land on the right area of conversation for us.
Yeah.
Because I think it's always so impactful when you can talk to someone who is not only knowledgeable about something, but is also excited and passionate about it.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that happens when there's an overlap of having access to this knowledge and wisdom, but also having had an experience or having lived through it. So to kick us off, just in a conversation, can you tell us or tell me and our listeners a little bit about your personal experience or your personal relationship with food and your body and all of that?
Sure. I suffered with an eating disorder for over a decade. It started, the kind of roots of the disorder started from high school onwards, but I would say that I've always had kind of a tricky relationship with food. As a little girl, I was incredibly fussy and very, very particular. So food always had a charge to it. I wasn't easy with food. I wasn't just I'll eat whatever. There was always an issue around it. And then as I started to get a little bit older, I had started to have some issues with school and some friends. And my mom, bless her cotton socks, with all the best of intentions, would pick me up from school and I would be crying or upset about something. And the first thing she would do is let's go get ice cream. Let's go get waffles. Let's go get McDonald's. Always just trying to help me and feel better. But what she was actually doing on an unconscious or unintentional way was she was teaching me how to pacify my pain through food. And so I started to have an emotional connection to food from a young age where I'm uncomfortable, I'm in pain. This is the thing that makes me feel better. And so I would say that was kind of the roots behind my eating disorder. And then as a young teen, kind of battled a little bit with my weight and started to show signs of disordered eating, but I didn't have the language or the consciousness to understand what that was. So I'd eat something bad and then I wouldn't eat for 2 days, So I started to create this habitual pattern around unhealthy or disordered ways of viewing food and my body. And then after school, it just started to spiral out of control. And I developed a binge and restrict eating disorder, which means that I mean, it took on different shapes and forms, but the basis of it was that from Friday until Sunday, I was binging copious amounts of unhealthy food. And then from Monday until like Friday afternoon, predominantly starving myself and restricting myself. And that was a cycle that went on for years and years and years and years. So it was incredibly debilitating, incredibly exhausting, and eventually got to a point where it was soul destroying and my life was completely obstructed by the disorder. And so I came to a point of deep acceptance that I needed to change something. And so my healing journey began. And it's been many years of healing and processing and reflecting and trying different tools and trying different therapists. And slowly but surely, I've come into a place of harmony and respect and love with food in my body. It's been a long journey, but a beautiful one. And I wouldn't take back anything because it now allows me to understand the mind of an eating disorder in a way that sometimes I find even therapists who haven't experienced it themselves, there's a disconnect. I had a therapist who'd never had an eating disorder, and she'd be like, today you are going to eat food. I'm like, it's not that simple, you know? So the gift that I have is the lived experience of going through the insanity of what an eating disorder is and understanding the nuances and the facets of it to help my clients find healing as well. So I'm in a place now where I love food, I love my body, and it's a beautiful, harmonious relationship. But it definitely took some time to get there.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that and being open to sharing that, like with whoever, the millions of listeners out there will manifest that. But just to your point that you said earlier about emotive eating, and I can so relate to that. I feel like my mom did the same thing with me growing up, and also probably not realizing what was actually being reinforced, you know.
They're doing the best that they think is helpful.
And like food is a reward, or it's like have something because whatever. Yeah, use, as you said, food to placate your emotional world and your emotional landscape. And I still do that. I think I've gotten a lot better at it, but I still kind of do that to this day. Or I would, up until fairly recently, almost go into like a trance when I was going through something, like basically blackout while eating and just like eat and eat.
It's a form of disassociation.
Yeah.
And we self-soothe through that disconnect, because to be connected when you're not feeling good or feeling uncomfortable or feeling pain is to be present with that pain. And we don't have tools to do that. And so food, it's okay sometimes if you utilize food to soothe.
Yeah.
But when it's to the point of absolute numbing and disassociation, it can be problematic for sure.
And like physical discomfort.
100%.
Yeah.
But I also think that there's a fine line to saying like, oh, we should never have any emotionality connected to food. Like when I'm on my period, a big bowl of beautiful pasta and some chocolate is so nourishing on every level. So it's, yes, food has an emotional tie to it, but it's also your intention behind that. You know, are you using it to completely numb and distract yourself, or are you using it to just maybe just even be present in your discomfort and soothe for a moment? That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a prevalent conversation that we're having, I think. And I always I'm grateful that my own personal experience with disordered eating and like weird dynamics with food, I always feel a little bit apprehensive of claiming that statement because so many other women and, you know, people experience it on such a greater extreme. So I don't want to ever be disrespectful to that experience.
For sure.
But when I look at people who have gone through the worst of it, I'm always in so much awe as to when they do overcome it, or if they do overcome it, because food is literally, you have to do it.
You can't escape it.
You have to eat. Like it must be, as you said, like you said, it was an insanity. Like I can't imagine how difficult it must be trying to rectify that relationship with something that, it's not like drugs, right? It's not like, oh, you
just abstain and go to rehab.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
You have to eat. And I think that what people don't realize is, for me, living with an eating disorder for over a decade is probably the closest I've come to insanity. There's not rationale or logic connected to it. You absolutely feel bonkers. And you are run by a master program that is there to sabotage and destroy you. And it can be very, very overwhelming because, you have to eat 3 times a day. Well, don't have to, but, you know, that's kind of what's encouraged. So it's inescapable. And if you have a tricky relationship with food, you are confronted with it every single day. There's no escape from it.
And when you say a master program, what do you mean by that? Is that like the built-in, like internal narrative from when you were a kid being told use food to placate yourself?
I mean, there's lots of programs in the sense of like what's happening in your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
So your programs are your patterns and your thoughts and behaviors that get repeated consistently. And a lot of the time our programs are created or put in place by our parents or by media when we're children. And if we're not aware of those programs, they run the show for the rest of our lives. And so the more we repeat and consistently ingrain a certain program, aka an eating disorder program that is based on not being enough or based on self-loathing, the more that program gets stronger and stronger, and the more it reinforces itself in your thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. And so it becomes a master of your mind until you begin to reprogram, which is sometimes what I help my clients to do, then your willpower is not stronger than that master program. And that's why so many people fail at healing eating disorders or fail at trying to heal their relationship with food, because they think, just got to have the willpower to do this. Your willpower is not strong enough. And that's why we feel like failures. And so that's what I meant by master program. It's your subconscious mind that's running the show. It's a set of neural pathways that fire and wire together every single day that you relate to food in a certain way.
Is there anything that, look, this might not be a question you can answer in this setting, and might not be the time or the place for it, so feel free to say,
Sure.
You'll pass. But when you were talking about a master program and like saying the influence of media or the things, or just external voices, right, how they can ingrain a way of thinking into you. And I think growing up in the advent of like the 2000s,
oh God,
I know, it's like traumatized to this day. To this day, with Heat magazine and cellulite and like fat shaming Britney and all these terrible things that we did to women over that period, and like the level of obsession it created within me. It was also the supermodel era.
Oh, 100%.
Where like actually the 90s were, but that was like supermodels were a thing. They don't really exist that much. They kind of do still, but it was a proper thing, and being like super skinny was
totally.
And I can, to this day, like to this morning, to whenever, like it's still a part. It's not a part of my program. I can say, at least looking in the mirror and feeling inadequate, or looking at my legs and being like, you got so much cellulite, and I'll say, you can ask my boyfriend, like I'll say to him almost every day, I'm like, fuck, I need to start running.
Yeah.
I need to do more. I need to change how I look, because and I can't think of a time when, even if I have been stronger or leaner, even then been satisfied, because it would always be, well, it's just this one more, it's still this little bit, I wish my boobs were bigger now that I've lost weight.
Happy.
Yeah. So like, I wonder if there is, what would you suggest, or what could you say in your knowledge or understanding is a way to disrupt that program, or like steps someone could take towards not being in that default mode?
Yeah. Okay. So I think first and foremost is becoming aware of what the programs are, and becoming aware of what the narratives are that are connected to those programs. So if the program is to be loved, I need to be skinny. What are some of those narratives? Well, you're not good enough the way that you are. You should be starving yourself. You need to run more. If only I could just get rid of this one patch. So you start unveiling all the scripts and the tactics that master program uses to have you acting in accordance or alignment with that programming. And so when your program gets activated, when you look in the mirror and you start to see your faults, that's something that you've habitually done for most of your life. So you don't have to even consciously think about analyzing your faults. It starts immediately. So the first thing is becoming super aware. And that can be very exhausting, because the minute we become aware of our narratives, we're probably going to realize that they are consistent and they are reinforced on a day-to-day basis. So awareness is the first step. And then, it's a long process, but I would say starting to give yourself the opportunity to bring a chink in the chain of that neural pathway. And that is possibly using like what I call the choose again method. So if you are looking in the mirror and you have something critical to say, and your awareness acknowledges that inner critic, you can then give yourself the opportunity to, instead of going on that neural pathway and then firing off a million more criticisms, you can give yourself the opportunity to choose the most accessible next thought that is in, what's the word that I want to use? That is the antithesis to the thought that you just had. Now, if you've said something really ugly about yourself, it's not going to necessarily feel accessible to go, I'm beautiful and I love myself and I'm gorgeous. Your subconscious mind is going to be like,
you're lying.
You are talking shit, girl. And this is all the evidence that I have for why you're talking shit. So then I would just say, like, break the thought by saying, today I'm going to choose to practice loving myself, or I'm learning to love myself, that feels a lot more accessible than I love myself and I think I'm amazing. And if you can consistently start to do that, you consistently break that neural pathway from firing and wiring together. Now, that's one step that you can take to really starting to break the chain. But again, that becomes very exhausting. When I was healing my own eating disorder, every time I had an eating disorder thought, which was probably 50,000 thoughts a day, I would put my hand on my heart and my hand on my belly, and I would close my eyes and I would take a deep breath in, and I would say, I'm healing, and I'd take a deep breath out. And I might have done that 50,000 times a day at one point, and it was exhausting, but at the same time, I kept breaking that link the whole time. And what I want you to understand is that a master program is almost like an army that you've been fueling and training and feeding for most of your life. And so if you start to have an alternative narrative, you're going against an army of, let's say, 10,000 warriors, right? You're going to fail for a long time. But most people give up when they are trying to attack this army or this master program. I want to encourage people to recognize that every time you break the cycle or choose again, you are starting to fuel a new army. You're starting to train a new army. So what happens in 2 months' time when you've been training this new army every single day? Finally, you have an opportunity to go into battle with that master program. But most people don't give themselves the opportunity to have that training. They just get exhausted and depleted and frustrated because the master program is so much bigger than them.
That's such a beautiful analogy.
It's a nice way to think about it.
Rather than seeing it as a defeat every time you aren't successful in that moment of like completely canceling any of these negative thoughts, you see it as a victory for the new army that you're building.
Totally. And another way to put it is like when you're building a new neural pathway, when you go to the gym and you're training your muscles, each muscle rep is an opportunity to get stronger. Each time you choose again is an opportunity to get stronger. It doesn't mean you leave the gym all of a sudden jacked after one round. You're training new neural pathways. And so words like practice or I'm learning, they are the bridge between where you are now and where you want to be.
So earlier when you said that you had an eating disorder thought, I just would like to know if you could articulate an example of what that would be.
Anything to do with obsessing over what I just ate, obsessing over looking in the mirror, counting calories, thinking about my next meal, criticizing my body, anything that was related to the control that that eating disorder had. I mean, there wasn't a second that went by where I wasn't constantly consumed by thinking of food, my body, restriction, what I was going to eat, what I was going to binge, what I was not going to eat.
How you're going to punish yourself for what you've already done.
1,000%. So the minute you become aware of that, you're like, holy shit.
There's a lot going
on here. And I have to start to break this chain because it's just happening without me even being aware of it now.
A lot of burnt fuel, a lot of energy just being,
Totally.
So in your experience, what would you say is the difference between discipline and restriction?
So, I think there's two things to this question. I think that discipline and restriction, there could be a difference based on the intentionality behind them. So you can be someone who has discipline in their life because you love your life and you want to be fully optimized and you want to thrive and you've chosen a more disciplined path to do so. But and restriction can obviously be more punishing in its intentionality or withholding or lacking something. But I think that when you are struggling with a disorder or an eating disorder, disordered eating, discipline is often a mask for an eating disorder. So eating disorders are very sneaky. They like to use masks. For me, discipline was one of the masks. Veganism was one of the masks. You know, if I can eat this way, or if I can look disciplined, or if I look like I'm eating healthy, that's why there's a new eating disorder called orthorexia. It's like the obsession with eating healthy.
Oh, really?
It's like I rather, instead of using the word discipline, I think discipline has quite a masculine energy to it. It's quite harsh. It's quite rigid. I shift the word to devotion, which is a lot softer, a lot more nurturing, and a lot more love-based. And so instead of being disciplined around food, I'm devoted to how I nourish my body. Instead of being disciplined with movement, I'm devoted to how I move my body. Completely different shifts.
Completely different feeling.
Completely different, because one is coming from a place of lack and you need to change something about yourself and harshness, again, rigidity. And I don't find that frequency has ever been helpful in healing. Whereas devotion is so much more loving, and it gives you grace and it gives you space to grow and to learn into a new way of being.
And it's also so much more powerful.
Yeah,
it's like
totally.
If you think of the two words and even the word that you said now, rigidity, how if something's rigid, it can snap. It has that. Whereas devotion, it almost feels like you can't defeat devotion. You know what I mean? It's like the ultimate power or the ultimate source.
It has such a mothering type energy to it. And so with a lot of my clients, I give them the opportunity to shift those two words, and things change dramatically because it's no longer coming from a place of self-punishment, which often discipline can feel like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're devoted to your healing or devoted to yourself, there's a whole different frequency in how you embody yourself and your healing.
Do you think that this bizarre or strained, what am I trying to say? Complicated relationship with food is pretty common across most women?
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you think that for the most part, almost anyone listening could start an internal questioning or start maybe a little bit more self-awareness around this kind of stuff because it's that deep-rooted, culturally and societally?
100%. I mean, I would say 80 to 90% of the women that I work with have some form of disordered way of eating or viewing their bodies. It doesn't mean that all of them have full-blown eating disorders, but there is specifically with women, and I'm not saying men are not impacted by this, but specifically with women, there is a collective program that has been fed into us from when we were little girls on how to relate to ourselves, how to relate to our worthiness, and how to value our bodies. Our bodies have become commodities in this world. And so it's definitely a point of self-reflection for most people. I think because so much healthy eating, and like I said, eating disorders wear so many masks, it's also easy to bullshit yourself.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I was vegan for 6 years and I thought that I was taking care of my body. All I was doing was finding an easy way to restrict, an acceptable way to restrict.
So when did you have the realization that it was actually a problem? Did your health confront you?
No, my health challenges only came later on. I mean, I knew I had a problem. It was very, very obvious. I knew my patterning with food was extremely destructive. I was in pain all the time because my gut was a disaster. And I was absolutely exhausted. It was all consuming. There was no denial that it was a problem.
Yeah.
I think the only language that I didn't have for a long time was that binge eating was actually an eating disorder. I knew about anorexia, I knew about bulimia, and I just thought that I had a problem with overeating. I didn't understand that there was actually a real issue there. And then I just thought that I counteracted it with restriction, aka anorexic. I didn't eat for 5 days. So I definitely knew I had a problem. I mean, my hair was falling out. I also used to hope that I could land up vomiting. I wish that I could vomit because that would make my life so much easier, but I absolutely can't stand vomiting. It was very difficult for me. So when you start wishing that you can hopefully vomit up your food, sorry, I know that sounds super disgusting.
No, it doesn't.
But you really start to look at yourself and go, shit, I'm actually praying for bulimia? What the hell is going on here, you know?
Yeah. No, I think the look on my face is because I had a flashback to doing that as well as a child, where I remember it's such a vivid memory. So obviously I knew something was on the precipice of going extremely awry, if not already in a precarious situation. But I went to Spur with my mom, and my mom is very much, she has a relationship with food, which, I think she overeats, I don't know what I had. We just used to always eat out often, and it was always starters and this and
in abundance.
In abundance, so much food. And I ate, and I've always had this capacity for eating a lot. But it's beyond appetite. It's just, I can put a lot of food into my body and somehow keep it in there.
Yeah.
And I ate 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 so much. And I was even I think my mom was even a bit alarmed as to how much I'd eaten. And then I went to the toilet, and because I'd overdone it.
Yes.
And I stood over the toilet, and I was looking into the toilet bowl, and I just thought, okay, I think I might have even stuck my fingers in my throat. Yeah, I was I'm doing it because I'm actually in severe discomfort / borderline pain, and I need to get this out of my body. I've made a grave mistake.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get myself to vomit, which we would say probably would have opened a whole nother, experience for me. So that's just to say that look at my faces, I was like, yeah, I know that feeling of binging.
So that super full, terrible feeling, that's why I wanted to vomit, because I lived with that every single week, 3 times a week, so if I'd had that release of vomiting, I think it would have been even more dangerous than it was for me, because living with the shame of the binge and the disgusting feeling and the discomfort was almost punishment enough. But yeah.
Wow, deep conversations.
Very much
I
so.
love it. What would you say to someone who has an extremely restrictive eating habit that believes that they're being good?
I mean, I think the first thing that I would look at is like, do you feel the need to reflect on that for a moment? Because if you don't, and you don't necessarily think you have a problem, doesn't matter what I have to say, you know, I've got people in my life who are very good with food. They are not open to hearing how they are restricting themselves and how they had a big lunch, they don't have any dinner. And like, so I would say if you are open to reflecting and recognizing that there might be a challenge there because you're utilizing restriction as a means to feel good about food and your body, then check in with yourself around your intentions behind how you eat and ask yourself some really honest, brutal questions. And if the answers shock you or they're jarring or they're confronting, maybe it's time to lean in and get curious about the role that that's playing in your life, because restriction is not just about food. It's an energetic frequency that we reside in on a day-to-day basis. So if you're restricting your food and you're restricting your intake of nourishment, what else are you restricting in your life? What else are you blocking out? It's multi-layered. And so if you've got an issue with food, I can guarantee you there's going to be other areas of your life that are going to be affected by that, because you're constantly stepping into a certain energetic frequency that is either claiming not enoughness, claiming brokenness, claiming the need to be perfect or need to have control. And when you are restricting how much you put into your body on a nourishment level, that's going to show up in restriction in many different other layers of your life, I think.
I feel like you said such a powerful point now, because I was actually going to maybe segue into that around how, like, using eating or using your relationship with food as a control mechanism, and I thought maybe that would have been the primary way that someone would do that. It's like, if I lack control in other areas of my life, if I feel out of control, then I will exercise control in the one way that I can, which is with myself and on this thing, which is my relationship with food.
Yeah.
But I guess it's interesting to see it also from the other side of the coin, or the other thing you mentioned, which is the lacking, the sense of like not enough and lack of abundance, and how that translates into someone's relationship with food.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, was that a question?
No, it wasn't. It was just a comment.
Yeah.
No, just a comment.
No, that was very good.
Yeah, it was just, I never really thought about it like that. So the next little part of our podcast is around like the root of our dissatisfaction and some of the questions I have here. So the first one is, why do you think so many women, even those who are objectively thin or conventionally beautiful, still struggle with feeling like they're not enough?
Yeah, I really like this question. It made me think a lot. I think there's two parts to this. One is we are so indoctrinated as little girls to not believe in our worthiness, to not believe in our ability to take up space, to not believe in our ability to expand, to shrink our voices, to shrink our bodies, and to constantly believe that we are less worthy, so that we are operating on a more disempowered level. And without sounding too much like a conspiracy theorist, I think that that's intentional. I think that when women are disempowered and disconnected from their bodies, we are silent, we are subservient, and we don't disrupt in the way that women are powerfully capable of disrupting. So I think that that's one element, if we've been indoctrinated to not believe in our enoughness. The other aspect of that is that because so much of society has shown us that our value lies in our body and our looks and our beauty and our youth and all these things, it's such a superficial snippet of the grand expanse of our humanity as women and who we are. And so when we are only valuing the sliver of superficial energy within us, we are always going to feel not enough, because we're not honoring everything else that makes us enough. And so if you look at the female body, and you look at how we don't honor, or we're not taught to honor our cycle and our bleed.
Yeah.
We're not taught to honor the magic that a woman's body is in every single month, moving through different phases and bleeding and having a death and rebirth cycle. We're not taught to honor that our intuition is our internal guidance system and a connection to God. We're not taught to honor that we are literally the vehicles in which life comes to this earth. And I think if we revered more of that magnitude of the core essence of what it means to be a woman, rather than just the superficial, which is not bad. It's not a problem to prioritize beauty or youth or how we look. But if that's the only thing that we are valuing about ourselves, we will never feel like we're enough.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That's super, super powerful.
Because if we actually started to value what really makes us powerful, we would never question it. It's impossible to question it. Women are innately magnificent creatures, and we hold so much power. But that's been stripped and robbed from us in so many ways. And I do think that's intentional.
I also feel like we have, as women, been pitted up against each other.
100%.
And there's this innate sense of competitiveness and competition and comparison that takes place. And I feel like that is also part of the fuel that feeds the monster that is this sense of inadequacy that we have within ourselves.
Totally. Because again, it's like that eradicates the idea of communal sisterhood and women being collaborators instead of competitors. And the more that we feed into that, the more that we try and one-up each other. And if we're trying to one-up each other, you're always going to try and perfect and optimize parts of yourself to be better than someone else. We should be able to be celebrating other women in their power, in their shine, in their light. But what happens is that someone else shining often diminishes our own because we don't believe in our own worthiness. And we believe that other women are threats. Who told us that? Who put that in our heads? I'm not saying that it's some shadow part of the divine feminine.
Yeah.
But I do think that it's definitely fuel to all of this.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I know that I'm super attached to my superficiality. And I have been most of my life. I feel like it was prioritized by my mother, who was really beautiful when she was in her youth. She still is beautiful, but she was, a standout belter.
Yes.
And I think learned to wield that and in some kind of a way as a tool to navigate, like whether it was to navigate, to manipulate, to
1000%.
win in whatever situation. And it taught me, and probably also various other external sources, built in this like personal understanding of self, in which being beautiful is like a weapon, almost. Like you can weaponize your beauty to get what you want. And I'm just like thinking about this now in our conversation, and how it's, if you're using beauty as a way, as a tool or something to protect yourself or to get ahead in life, how difficult it is to let go of that.
Totally. And how unsafe you would feel when your weapon starts losing its strength.
Oh my gosh, which it will.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
And then you're like, okay, well, what do I have now? Again, it's like that piece of like, we only are prioritizing one facet of what it means to be a woman. And if we are solely focused on that and not every single other facet that makes us whole and makes us worthy and powerful and capable and magnetic and beautiful, then that weapon slowly starts to lose its power, and we slowly start to feel like we've lost our power, we've lost our relevance, we've lost our safety net, we've lost our bargaining chip with the world.
Exactly.
That can be very confronting and disorientating, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we chatted about this a little bit, but I think I'm trying to be better with this, with the way that I prioritize being perfect, this like idea of perfection. But I still find myself like every single day I look in the mirror and I have these moments of confrontation with the fact that I'm actually getting older, and I want to just look 25.
Yeah.
And so I never want to look a day older than actually maybe even
make me
13.
Immortal. Let's go, please.
Take me back.
Turn me into a vampire.
Yeah. Take me back into the womb. And I wonder what we could do to learn to embrace that aspect of ourselves more. Like what do you think some of the shifts in narrative are that we could adopt?
I think there has to be like an internal revolution or an internal rebellion against all the parts of yourselves that you've reinforced and listened to for so long. But you also have to want something different for yourself. Otherwise, that rewriting of that internal narrative is going to feel very difficult. But I think it's about acknowledging the narratives, giving yourself the opportunity to decide if that narrative serves you and if it's going to bring out the absolute best in you. And if not, how can we rewrite that? How can we shift that? How do we speak to ourselves? If I had to put a little tiny microphone in your head, what would I be hearing on a day-to-day basis? If there's a critic, a bully, a vicious narrative in there that's getting a lot of airtime, then you need to knock that freaking voice off the soapbox and start to give some other voice a microphone. And like, if the first thing you do when you look in the mirror is criticize yourself, why don't you try celebrating one thing about yourself? The only reason why this is automated in your being is because you've practiced it long enough.
For so long.
So
exactly.
To automate a different perception or a different way of viewing yourself, you've got to practice being that person.
Yeah. So what role do you think identity and worthiness play in our relationship with our body?
I think it plays a massive role. If, like I said, if we shape our whole identity around how we look and we place that as our only value point, then when our looks fade or our looks change or circumstances, shift how we feel about ourselves and our body, then we will lose who we think we are. And who you are, without sounding too spiritual or woo-woo, has nothing to do with this human skin that you're in. As wonderful as it is to optimize it, take care of it, beautify yourself, that's part of being a woman, that's part of being feminine, that's not a bad thing. But if it's constantly done with the intention to find perfection, then you're chasing a ghost, you're chasing an illusion. Perfection outside of the innate divinity that resides within your body that's perfect. Your soul is perfect. But if you're trying to chase an aesthetic of perfection, you're never it's like a hungry ghost that's never satisfied. I started to realize, like, I call it like the peak of perfection. And I've been chasing perfection my whole life. And it was always like, when I get to the peak, when I get to that mountain, when I get this, when I do this, when I fix this, like, then I'll be happy. And what I recognized is every time I met that somewhat goal or destination, the peak of perfection just rose again. And then I climbed that one. And then I kept climbing the whole time. There was never a place of satisfaction or being content with where I was at. If perfection is what you're chasing, you're going to be chasing for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And even more so as you get older, that's going to become very exhausting to keep chasing that.
I know, it's already kind of exhausting. I also feel like the word worthiness and body, they almost shouldn't go hand in hand, in my opinion, because the implication, your body being, as you said, this like superficial external thing that the world engages with, it's almost as if we equate our value to the value that the world tells us we have. You know what I mean? Like, wherever the world tells us how hot we are or how the world engages with us is what we perceive our value to be.
Totally. And if your worthiness is conditional, that's problematic. Like, I am worthy when I'm skinny. I am worthy when I get Botox. I am worthy when I get my hair done. I am worthy when this guy talks to me. Like, no, you can't do that. Your worthiness has to be unconditional. It has to be the essence of who you are. And without sounding cliche, that's going to fucking look beautiful. Like a woman who is content with who she is, I'm not saying you don't try and optimize how you look to be your best self, but when you decide for yourself that your worthiness is ingrained in who you are and there's nothing you need to do to earn it or to receive it, I can see a woman like that come into a room and you can feel her. You can see she might not even be the most beautiful woman in the room, but my goodness, there's a radiance that vibrates off her because she's found that safety within herself. Because when you're constantly chasing, you're almost in that flight or fight the whole time.
Yeah.
Like dysregulation, go. I'm never satisfied. I'm never at peace. I'm never connected.
Never really present.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. I love this question as well, which is dissatisfaction a form of control? And what are we really trying to control? Because, I never really thought about it like that until I was preparing for this podcast. And I was like, is it? And I feel as though, I don't know, maybe I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, but I have grappled with my own internal dialogue of dissatisfaction. And it's not just with my body, but with almost everything. Like I can get so easily onto the internal monologue of like, or even just catch me on a bad day. I feel like I've worked hard to change this in recent months, but I was called out on it by my partner. He was like, you literally are never satisfied. Like you are never happy. It's always like, oh, the bed's too hard. Oh, well, the sun's out. It's so hot today. You know what I mean? It's like, when do we ever just find a way of satiating that voice?
Totally. Again, that's the idea of like when we're dissatisfied with something and we connect to the energy of dissatisfaction, it's going to filter into all different facets of our life. Do I think it's what did you say about a form of control? I think it can be absolutely a form of control. I think control can take on many different masks, dissatisfaction being one of them. The root of it is this is not enough. So I'm unsatisfied with what I have right now. Again, what are you trying to fill something within yourself? But the idea of control is also just something I want to touch on is why are we needing control? I think that's a good question to ask, because if we are constantly seeking control for me is the illusion of safety. So if I am in control of my food, my life, my world, my relationships, my work, my finances, if everything is in my control, I am safe. Why do we feel unsafe in the first place? I think that's what you have to look at. Because when you start to acquire or embody safety within yourself, you no longer are going to need the illusion of control. Eating disorders give you the illusion of control. You're not in control, it's controlling you, you know? Taking care of yourself in a way that is micromanaging every part of your appearance so that it looks perfect is the illusion of control. That's managing you. You don't have control over that. So if we stop feeding into this need for control and start rather fueling the need for safety and checking in with why we don't feel safe in our bodies, I think it would shift that. It shifted that for me, for sure.
What do you think are some of the reasons people don't feel safe in their bodies?
I think we are a dysregulated society. Firstly, I think we're disconnected. So our bodies are not safe places for us to be. I think we are far too... I think we have way too many programs that are self-critical and judgmental and shameful. So like I said, like if I had to put a microphone in your head, am I hearing a loving, nurturing, kind, compassionate voice? Or am I hearing a bully? If you're constantly dealing with a bully inside of your head, how can you feel safe inside of yourself? You're going to run away the whole time. And then also just as women, I don't necessarily think women feel safe in the world in general.
Yeah, in general, completely.
Full stop. That's just a reality. And it's in us. It's in our cells.
Yeah. I can see that, how that might also translate into taking action in this kind of a way. You know what I mean?
And there's also so much pressure on us.
There's
pressure on us to look a certain way, to show up in the world a certain way, to have, you know, being an adult is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. Like I'm still figuring it out. And the need to control comes with this feeling of like, I don't feel safe in knowing what I'm doing here. And if we all could just admit a little bit that we're all kind of fumbling around, figuring things out, rather than pretending like we have everything figured out, we might not have the need to micromanage every area of our lives because we'd give ourselves some grace to fuck up, to fail, to fall, to make mistakes, and to recognize that that's part of our growing, it's part of our learning. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to have every single box ticked. But somehow, specifically as women, we think we need to get it all done.
Yeah.
And controlling things in our lives makes us feel like we have some semblance of management over all of these things.
I feel like it also kind of relates to the like commoditization of the female body a little bit, in as much as the way that has taken place, the fact that our bodies are so commoditized and we feel like we have to fit into such a prescribed mold that is out of our control. Do you know what I mean? It's out of our control. And like, you just dealing with what you have and you're trying to kind of take the reins and trying to get yourself into a position in which maybe the outside world is more accepting of you and more, you know, back into this whole worthiness aspect or finding a place or, it's
when I've been at my skinniest and at my sickest, I've had the most compliments, I've had the most validation, I've had the most celebration around my body and how I look. And I remember in the deepest depths of my eating disorder, I was living in Thailand at the time, and I was lying on the beach, and I was just observing every woman's body, not from a judgmental lens. I was just looking at all the women on the beach. There was not one body that looked the same as the other body. Like, women's bodies are so magnificently unique, and so different. And yet most of us are trying to subscribe to type A body type or type B body type, when there is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like a million different versions of how our bodies are supposed to show up in their most beautiful ways. But we believe, or society celebrates, this box and this box. And then we spend our lives trying to fit into those two boxes when we don't actually understand that our body's supposed to look completely different way to that. And we're not celebrated for that uniqueness or that difference. It's like, let's all be sheep, fit into this one box.
Exactly. I feel like I also had a similar experience to you when I was at probably my skinniest as well, at my thinnest. And I feel like
the most
comments, everyone, look, I had one or two friends say to me, you look really skinny. And I took that so badly. I was like, who the fuck do you think you are commenting on my body? Which is fair. I think that holds truth.
100%. Don't comment on people. Don't comment on people's bodies.
Don't comment on people's bodies. Do not. So that made me, I was outraged at the notion of that. But it did give me a moment's pause, I think, where I was like, okay, so what is actually happening here? Because maybe I am a little bit skinny, and I actually couldn't, I'm actually lying. I couldn't actually see how thin I was until probably quite recently. If I look back on some of the posts that I made on Instagram, that
you can recognize.
People, you're looking so ripped, looking amazing. And I was just like, my waist was this big. You know what I mean? My arms were probably like that thick.
Yeah.
I just looked so thin. And now kind of transitioning out of that restrictive eating and eating one meal a day. That's what I used to do. And then I was calorie counting. I think I would try to eat less than 1,000 calories a day. So I would have one meal, but that's an easy way to solve that problem, is to have one meal. You know what I mean? If it's still a healthy meal, you just have one meal and then you carry on with your life. You wake up and you try and time it at a time where maybe around like dinner-ish or like a late lunch, so you can push through the morning, that kind of a vibe, and make sure that I'm doing Pilates and walking and being so extreme with myself and on my body. And still, as we said, never feeling satisfied. And then I think like I could sense that something was definitely not right. So then I was like, okay, I need to change this dynamic. Because also I think I was starting to feel quite fatigued.
100%. I mean,
exhausted.
1,000 calories is going to get you nowhere, girl.
And all burning calories.
There's no fuel in the system whatsoever.
There's no fuel in the system. And I was just like super tired and grumpy. And, my mood and energy was just shocking. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to stop calorie counting and I'm just going to eat. I'm just going to eat. I'm going to eat when I'm hungry. I'm going to try eat healthily, but I'm not going to consciously restrict and curate every single meal that I have. And then I did that, and I was going to Pilates and I put on weight. And I feel like, look, I will say it because that's how I felt. I bulked out. Okay, everyone's going to want to like jump through the camera and slap me. But let me say it.
Say it.
Yeah. I felt like I was like bulky, and it actually scared me off of exercising and doing Pilates. And then I was like, no. Like I need to maybe go back to what I know, which is just restricting my food, because
that's your comfort zone as well.
Yes, that's like the easiest way to do it. Because the more I exercise, the more I want to eat. And like I might as well just eliminate.
It's a dangerous game. Let's cut that off.
Yeah, exactly. So, but anyway, I feel like I've done a lot of healing as well, personally, and have, again, put on weight in a good way. Like I love my body. I do feel good in my body. I do also criticize myself every day. I'm not going to pretend like I'm completely whole in that capacity. But
there's still room for healing.
Yes. But when we were chatting prior to the podcast, you were speaking about this, and you said how challenging it can be for some women when they're on this journey, when they put on what you called healing weight.
Yes.
Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, I mean, it happened to me, and it happens to a lot of my clients. if your biggest fear is putting on weight, or that's the thing you've been doing so good at not, the thing you've been so good at is not putting on weight. And then your body actually starts to find harmony in gaining a little bit of weight, which for most women, super, super skinny is not healthy. That's not how our bodies thrive. That's not how our hormones thrive, or our nervous system thrives. And so when you start to put on that weight, it's completely unknown. It's completely terrifying. And if body dysmorphia is wrapped up in that as well, then what you're probably seeing is not necessarily the reality of the situation. And it can be incredibly, incredibly confronting. Very, very much so. I think, though, for me personally, and what I try and get clear with my clients is, if you really want to heal disordered eating, healing needs to be a bigger priority than weight. Because on the journey to your body finding homeostasis or its point of comfort or health, your weight might fluctuate a bit as your body tries to figure out what the fuck is going on here. You've been starving yourself for so long, and now you're eating. And also remember is that when you're not eating enough, you put your body in that flight or fight mode. And so it then starts to store all the food that you do eat when you start eating again.
Because it thinks this is unsafe.
When am I going to get my next meal? I need to hold on to this. And so, I got to a point where putting on weight was not as important to me as healing. And that gave me a permission slip to be in the gray area for a little bit.
And when you say healing, what was some indicators of that be? Is it like mental clarity, improved mood, or you know what I mean? Like
not participating in eating disorder behavior.
Okay.
So I took it day by day. I started with I had a set of mala beads when I was super, super spiritual at the time, and I called it my self-love medal. And every single morning I'd put my self-love medal on, and that was like my declaration for today, not tomorrow, not next week, but for today, I'm not going to participate in that behavior. And again, just starting to build neural pathways that had a different relationship with food. So for me, healing was no longer participating in eating disorder behavior, and no longer being led by eating disorder thoughts. That's what healing for me meant.
Okay.
Yeah. And obviously the consequences of that is a better metabolism, a better nervous system, better hormones, mental health, clarity. Like there's so many more benefits to changing your body in a way that makes it healthy and thriving instead of just surviving. So yes, you've got a lot of reward coming your way, but that reward might look different to what you're used to, which is the dopamine hit of being super skinny.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned now body dysmorphia. Can you help us understand a little bit more about that?
Yes.
This is a little bit off script. I mean, I can give like a prescribed question for this, but primarily because I think, as with anything in life, whether it's your relationship with food, whether it's drugs, like we tend to think that if it's not the worst, if it's not in the worst case scenario of it, that you struggle
totally
to relate to it.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to understand, applying that same thinking to something like body dysmorphia. What are some signs, and we're not here to like diagnose people. I'm not trying to do that. But what are some signs that you are thinking about yourself potentially in an unhealthy way that could be along the lines of that?
I think first and foremost is look at the narratives in which you speak about yourself, because your narratives are your programming, and your programming shapes the lenses in which you view the world and you view yourself. If your programming is warped and overcritical, that's going to literally shape what your eyes see in the mirror. So that's the first thing, is look at your narratives, look at your programming, because that's going to give you a little bit of an indication of, when I am looking in the mirror, is this reality or is this perception based through my programming? And then second is acknowledging, like, what you see in the mirror is, if you start proclaiming, I'm fat, I'm overweight, or I look disgusting, and everyone else around you is affirming something completely different, that's something to look at. Because the way that I understood that I had body dysmorphia was I had a bit of a mirror obsession. I was constantly looking at my body in the mirror the whole time. And when I was living in Indonesia, I was in bikinis quite often, and hence looking at body in the mirror the whole time. And in the space of 15 minutes, I must have checked my body 5 different times. And within those 5 different times, I saw 5 different bodies.
Oh, really?
Radically different.
Wow.
And I was like, something's very wrong here. Like, I know logically and rationally, there's no ways that this body looks different within these 15 minutes. But what my eyes are telling me is something completely different. So yeah, I think just, again, but my perception of what I was seeing was shaped by my narratives. And my narratives were incredibly problematic.
So each time, depending on what you were saying to yourself in your head, or what you were maybe feeling insecure about, seeing reflected back to you, that would inform what you saw in the mirror?
Potentially, yes, but also I had a warped perception of what my body looked like. So every time I looked in the mirror, it looked different. So it was like, oh, I look skinnier. Oh no, I'm looking fat. Oh, my bum looks small there. Oh no, my bum looks big here. Oh, my thighs look this way. Oh no, oh, my collarbone's sticking out. Oh, now I've got fat on my collar. Like, what do you do? Like, what's going on here? You know? So I think body dysmorphia, if you start to feel a little bit crazy, that might be your opportunity to check in a little bit. And I say that like with a laugh, but I don't mean that lightly.
Yes.
And obviously it's going to show up differently for different people. But like I said, I think if you can acknowledge that there is a warped perception in the way in which you view yourself, there is more than likely going to be a warped perception in what you see in the mirror.
Deep breath.
Yeah.
Wild. Okay. I'm going to skip past. Are there any questions? I'm going to go into this part 4 kind of section now.
Okay, cool.
If you're happy with that.
Perfect.
And just, because I think this is kind of like a nice few questions into wrapping up.
For sure.
Because we will have been recording for
56 minutes.
56 minutes.
Good.
Yeah, perfect.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay, amazing. Okay, so what has helped you find peace in your body?
This is a lot has helped me. One that might be very surprising to people is getting to a place in my journey where I was struggling so much that it felt like my eating disorder was so much bigger than me. I started praying, and I have a connection to God of my own definition, not through religion at all, but just to a higher power. And I know that God can be very triggering for some people to hear, but I started praying and handing over my struggle to a higher power. That felt very surrendered, and that felt very safe to start. And then a lot of deep reprogramming. I worked with a therapist. I worked with a coach. I was radically honest with myself, and I called myself out on all my bullshit. And I was radically responsible for myself. I finally took ownership over what was going on. I stopped blaming the world and stopped blaming society, and I recognized that I was the problem. And through that, using multiple modalities, subconscious reprogramming, affirmations, self-love rituals, shifting how I related to food, rebelling against all the programming that told me to restrict, rebelling against the labels around food being good or bad, and giving myself the grace and the patience to fall down as many times as I needed to, and recognizing that every time I went back to an eating disorder pattern or thought, and I forgave myself in that moment and picked myself up like a loving sister or a loving friend would, I was fueling a set of pathways that was more self-loving. Because usually after a binge or after a week of restriction, I was filled with so much loathing and so much shame. And all that loathing and shame was doing was fueling the next binge, fueling the next point of starvation. And so every time that I binged or I starved myself, I would forgive, and I would love the part of me that was still needing those coping mechanisms. And so picking yourself up when you're down and recognizing that the healing process is not linear, and it's not a destination that you arrive at. It's a place of remembering who you actually are in the first place and coming home to that version of yourself. And so, there's a bunch of modalities and a bunch of tools that I practiced on a day-to-day basis. But it took some years, I'm not going to lie. And it took a lot of dedication and a lot of patience and a lot and a lot of grace.
And devotion.
Yeah.
Just coming back to that love aspect
and also re-educating myself about food and about my body and getting passionate about being healthy, because I'm dealing with a lot of health consequences now because of what I did to my body. And so now my motivation is just being the best version of myself, whatever weight that might be. And I am fortunate enough that the more harmony and congruence that I brought to my relationship with food and my body, the more that actually reflected physically. I laugh now that I don't count calories, but if I had to guess, I'm eating more calories than I've ever eaten in my life. And I'm probably in the best shape that I've ever been in my life. And if little me who was starving herself all the time could have known that, you know?
Yeah.
But I would say, be honest, accept where you're at, get the help that you need, and recognize you're in for a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
But the person who you discover on the other side, she's going to delight you in every way.
That's beautiful. So what does nourishment look like for you now?
Nourishment for me now looks like utilizing food as medicine, utilizing food as an opportunity to delight in joy and abundance and privilege to having healthy, delicious food, utilizing food as a means to revitalize and restore my cells and take care of myself, and using food to fuel me in my day. I'm coaching clients all day. Like, I'm eating before every session because I understand that that's energy that my body needs. So there's a completely different relationship to it. Nourishing other areas of my life outside of just food, not making food the biggest priority anymore. Making sure my relationships are good, making sure my boundaries are strong, making sure that I'm taking care of myself in a way that is loving and kind, and that I trust my body now to eat pizza and to not have a whole story around it, and to eat unhealthy food once in a while and be okay with it. Like, building that self-trust with my body is how I nourish myself now.
Very powerful. Even when you arrived just before our session, you were like, "Are you going to have a banana?" Like, this is very taxing. How are you feeling?
I know, because it's just like, we need food as fuel, and it can be very powerful fuel, specifically as women for us, how we show up in the world.
Okay, so I think I'm going to make this our last question. And that is, how can we protect our healing from becoming another form of self-optimization? Can healing be separate from achievement, i.e. not about reaching an ideal version of ourselves?
I think it can get, as someone who's been on the healing journey and the spiritual path for a really long time, that can be another way of disconnection and disassociation, and feeling like there's always something that needs to be fixed within ourselves. And so I would look at the intention behind why you might be moving towards healing. If you're reaching for something outside of yourself, whether it's a destination, whether it's a goal, and you think that that's what's going to bring healing, you are forgetting the whole point of it. Healing is removing the layers of falsity that make you believe that you're broken in the first place. And so it's a remembering, and it's a homecoming. It's not a reaching outside of yourself for I need to get there and then I'll be healed. It's I need to remember what's in here and utilize that as my power portal to move towards healing. And self-optimization from a place of, I love myself and therefore I want more, I want to expand, I want to be better, I want to achieve more, I want to receive more, from a place of wholeness and groundedness, go for it. But if self-optimization is coming from I lack something, and when I get that, I will be better, or when I receive that, I will be more, or I will be worthy. Again, it's hungry ghost. You'll be starving forever. You'll be constantly seeking. So instead of reaching, in-source instead of outsource. Don't look towards something out there to find your power. Come back to what is stopping you from remembering who you are actually innately inside.
I love what you just said now. I'm going to paraphrase, but about removing the layers of like falsity or falsehood that have taught you to perceive yourself as broken.
100%. I always say, like, the only thing that's broken about you is the belief that you were broken in the first place.
Yeah.
It's nothing for you to fix. You can release certain behaviors, for sure. There's nothing in you that's broken. The belief that you're broken is the broken part.
Absolutely love that. I feel like that has been a huge theme for me as well, and especially with the podcast, trying to create content that is always like about this optimizing, reaching the next point, and finally getting to a place where it's just like, actually be where you are, enjoy your life for exactly where you are in the present moment.
Totally.
And
because that becomes a new drug. It becomes a new point of dopamine. Like, how healed can I be? How enlightened can I be? It
creates, again, like this dissatisfaction, discontentment.
You can't run away from your humanness, and you're never gonna escape you're going to have flaws, you're going to have shit you need to deal with throughout life, but it's having a capacity to manage those challenges in a way that is self-loving and caring and compassionate, hopefully. It changes your whole relationship with your life, I think. That's been my experience.
This has been absolutely incredible.
Thank you so much for having me.
You are an absolute well of knowledge.
Thank you.
And the sparkliest little champagne bubble to ever exist. So thank you so much for coming on, and
I really appreciate it.
Openness and for your willingness to discuss all these things.
Beautiful.
Thanks everyone for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that episode. Please will you follow us on whatever platforms it is that you might be listening to this. If it's Spotify, follow, share, YouTube, do the same. Follow us on Instagram. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed it. Giving you all the love in the world. Bye.
Bye.